Issues, Presentation, Professional Ethics, and Code. Group 3, Ashley Roberts, Keyshawn Williams, Madison Caldwell, and George Brown.
All right, so why do we need ethics? Understanding various concepts, theories, approaches, and principles through history helps today nurses identify and analyze ethical issues and dilemmas relevant to today. Ethics is the study of ideal human behavior and ideal ways of being, the understanding, analyzing, and distinguishing of matters, right and wrong, good and bad, and how it relates to the well-being of an individual. Bioethics is involved as a result of life and death moral dilemmas encountered by healthcare professionals, patients, and families. Dilemmas such as who should live or die and who should decide that. We use this to help guide and control public policy. And then we have nursing ethics, which is nurses are the primary agents in the scenario, and ethical issues are viewed from a nursing standpoint rather than a medical standpoint. And then moral reasoning is making decisions about how humans ought to be enact. And then values in nursing is must guide moral reasoning and actions, even when other people challenge those beliefs. And then we have a couple of ethical theories, which is virtue ethics. It's intellectual and character traits or habits developed throughout one's life. Basically, like what sort of person must I be to achieve my life's purpose. And then we have natural law theory, which is the rightness is evident from the laws of nature orchestrated by God. Basically, like if you follow this, it's saying birth control would be like immoral. And then deontology, which is actions that are duty-based. There's two types, hypothetical and then categorical. And then hypothetical is like rules and duties people should observe for achievement. Like if I want to pass my nursing course, I have to study. And then categorical is based on unconditional reasoning, moral actions are concerned, and duties and laws are absolute and universal. And then we have utilitarianism, which is the greatest good that's possible in situations. Like we do the greatest good for the greatest numbers. Moral acts that produce the most happiness with the least amount of harm is what we aim for. And then ethic of care, which is approach personal relationships, relationship responsibilities being emphasized, like compassion, empathy, sympathy, and concern and caring for others. And then we have ethical principlism, which is the conception of reality, rules, and justifications for moral behavior. We have autonomy, which is one's ability to self-rule and generate personal decisions on their own, like obtaining informed consent from treatment, 2, facilitating patient choice, 3, accepting patients' refusal of treatment, 4, disclosing medical information, diagnosis and treatment options to patients, and 5, maintaining confidentiality. And then we have beneficence, which is consisting of deeds of mercy, kindness, and charity. And this is like nurses might act on things that are for the patient's own good rather than the patient's use of autonomy. And then non-maleficences, which is do no harm, refraining from actions that might harm others. Basically like avoiding neglect and care and decision-making regarding withholding or withdrawing treatment. And then justice, which is principle is healthcare ethics, virtue, foundation of a duty-based ethical framework of moral reasoning. This refers to the fair distribution of benefits and burdens, like who has the right to healthcare, who will pay for the healthcare costs, and what is fair for it.
Professional codes. What are professional codes? They are a set of codes that cannot be negotiated. These are like discipline rules that all nurses must follow. When a nurse follows these rules, they are maintaining professionalism and exhibiting prominent characteristics of a good nurse. What type of codes is used today? The type of codes that nurses refer to are the ANA codes, which stands for American Nurses Association. There are currently 9 provisions in the most recent ANA Codes of Ethic book. What are the 9 provisions? Provision 1 talks about, and is similar to Jean Watson, it states that practicing the act of caring, understanding, compassion, and being respectful, and understanding that every person is their own with their own values and beliefs. Provision 2 states that the nurse's main priority is to the patient. As a result, this provision may require the nurse to get to know the patient in a professional, personal manner. Provision 3 addresses the issue of the nurse standing by the patient no matter what. To elaborate, the nurse will side with the patient's rights and decisions, even when the doctor or family disagree. Additionally, the nurse protects the patient's privacy as well. Continued Provision 5 basically reiterates Provision 4 with health promotion. However, Provision 5 is more focused on everyone instead of the patient alone. Additionally, it is also about honesty and professional growth. Provision 6 focuses on maintaining a safe and professional work environment to provide optimal, safe, and adequate health care to the patient. Provision 7, to me, seems like the nurses are keeping up to date with the new advances in technology in the healthcare field. Provision 8 is providing humane, unbiased, and unfavored care to all people in need of health care. Provision 9 talks about values, maintaining integrity, social justice, and applying to nursing. Trends on the ANA codes of ethics. For the most part, the codes do not get updated that often. The times that they do, it is to keep up to date with the current times and period and the different society/world technological advancements.
Okay, so ethical relationships between nurses and nurses to patients. So an ethical relationship between a nurse to another nurse would be professional relationships regulated by standard conduct, working together using good interpersonal relationship skills, using good communication, supporting and encouraging one another, establishing leadership roles in the team, and upholding the dignity of other healthcare providers. A nurse should talk to their patients using a professional relationship also regulated by standard conduct, and the relationship should be limited by the patient's need for care, which is goal-oriented, and it should be an unequal balance of power where the nurse has authority, knowledge, influence, and access to information. The scope of the issue related to the nursing profession would be forming too personal of relationships with your patients. So that would be things such as boundary crossing, which is an action or behavior deviating from the established boundary, or boundary violation, which is an action or behavior by a professional that uses the relationship with a patient to meet a professional or a personal need of the professional. The crossing of a boundary is only acceptable when it is for meeting therapeutic needs of the client, but must reestablish the appropriate professional relationship. Abuse and neglect are both considered extreme boundary violations as it meets the needs of the nurse at the expense of the patient.
Briefcase is basically the case that we're going to give to you is going to be either in life or death or an everyday situation. For our briefcase, we could have chosen from unethical standpoint or ethical standpoint of beneficence, non-malfeasance, breach in fidelity, which is confidentiality, veracity, which is truth-telling. Obviously, it could be a documentation issue, or autonomy, which obviously is patient could refuse healthcare or treatment. The one we chose is autonomy. So in the autonomy factor, there is a woman who is 21. She's a Jehovah's Witness and she's pregnant. She's in a car crash and is internally bleeding. She needs a blood transfusion to save the fetus and herself, but the dilemma is that Jehovah's Witnesses will reject blood or blood products. The serious medical dilemma in this is that to keep the woman alive, we have to either step across their autonomy or give up on our beneficence and create non-malfeasance. So it's a conundrum, and these types of things will happen, but we have to decide what is best. Do we stay with their autonomy, or do we save the woman? These types of things might not happen every day because it's a life and death situation, but it can definitely happen, so we need to be aware of these things. And our sources.
Yeah, these are just our sources for the PowerPoint. That's it. Thanks.
All right.